what the problem is with engineers? Give them a pencil, a drafting table, and too much time, and they'll find a way to make a simple two-wheeled machine into something that needs a PhD to understand. I'm talking motorcycles that make zero sense. Bikes with car engines, bikes with helicopter engines, bikes with four wheels that aren't even technically motorcycles anymore. Bikes so complicated, the manual is thicker than a phone book. And here's the thing, most of these actually got built. Real companies spent millions of dollars making machines that nobody asked for, solving problems that didn't exist. Today we're counting down the 15 most stupidly complex motorcycles ever made. And I guarantee by number 1, you'll be shaking your head wondering what the hell these people were thinking. Let's get into it. Number 15, Suzuki RE5. We're kicking off with the Suzuki RE5 from 1974. Now, you might be thinking, what's so complicated about a bike from the 70s? Well, Suzuki decided to put a rotary engine in it. You know, a Wankel engine. The same thing Mazda couldn't quite figure out either. Here's what you need to know. This thing had a single rotor engine, but to keep it from melting into a puddle of aluminum, they installed 3 oil reservoirs, 2 oil pumps, and radiators for both water and oil cooling. And guess what? It's still overheated. The maintenance schedule read like a nightmare. You had to check different oil levels in different places. The apex seals wore out constantly. And if you wanted to work on it yourself, good luck finding anyone who knew what they were doing. Suzuki made these for 2 years before they gave up. The bike was heavy, underpowered, and got terrible gas mileage. But hey, at least it looked like something out of a science fiction movie, right? Wrong. It just looked weird. Number 14, Yamaha GTS 1000. Yamaha looked at the telescopic fork, which had been working fine on motorcycles for about 80 years, and said, nah, we can do better. They came up with this thing called the rad system. Instead of forks, you got a front swing arm with a single shock absorber. The steering was separated from the suspension using a bunch of linkages and pivot points that looked like something from an engineering textbook. The frame? 2 C-shaped aluminum plates. That's it. They called it an Omega frame. Now, on paper, this all sounds pretty clever. Anti-dive under braking, better suspension control, all that jazz. In reality, the bike ate through front tires like nobody's business. The steering felt weird. The whole system was expensive to maintain, and when something went wrong, which it did, you couldn't just take it to any shop. You needed a Yamaha specialist who'd actually seen one of these before. They sold it for 3 years. Barely anyone bought it. And you know why? Because sometimes the old way is the old way for a reason. Number 13, Honda DN01. Here's a bike that makes you wonder if Honda was just messing with us. The DN01 from 2008. Instead of a normal transmission, Honda spent millions developing a hydraulic drive system. The engine turned a hydraulic pump, fluid traveled through the swing arm, and a hydraulic motor at the rear wheel made it go. It was like a CVT, but way more complicated and way more expensive. Oh, and they made it ugly. I'm talking aggressively ugly. It looked like a scooter that ate too many cheeseburgers. The hydraulic system offered exactly 0 advantages over a regular transmission. It was heavy, it was expensive to fix, and when you twisted the throttle, it felt mushy, like riding through pudding. Honda discontinued it after 2 years. They lost a fortune on development, and the worst part, you can pick these up, used for almost nothing now because nobody wants them. Some innovations move motorcycling forward. This one moved it sideways into a ditch. Number 12, Confederate motorcycles. Confederate motorcycles, now called combat motors, decided that regular manufacturing was for regular people. These guys took blocks of solid aluminum and machined entire frames out of them. We're talking billet construction for almost everything. The kind of manufacturing process that costs a fortune and takes forever. They stuffed in modified Buell and S&S V twin engines, covered everything in carbon fiber, and charged anywhere from $50,000 to $150,000. Here's the problem. They were beautiful, but they weren't that much better than bikes costing a quarter of the price. You were paying for art, not performance. And because almost every part was custom made, when something broke, you couldn't just order a replacement. You had to wait for them to machine a new one. The company went bankrupt multiple times. They kept coming back, changing names, but the formula stayed the same, over-engineer everything, charge a fortune, go bankrupt. That's not a business model, that's a hobby that got out of hand. Number 11, Munch Mammoth. Back in 1966, a German guy named Friedel Munch decided motorcycle engines were too small, so he grabbed a 1.2-liter inline-4 from an NSU car and shoved it into a motorcycle frame. The Munch Mammoth, which means mammoth, produced about 100 horsepower. That might not sound like much now, but in the 1960s, that was absolutely bonkers. Most bikes were making 40 or 50 horses. To handle all that power, Munch had to custom build pretty much everything. The chassis was massive. It was the first production bike with cast magnesium wheels, which they needed because nothing else could handle the weight and power. The whole thing weighed as much as a small car. It had shaft drive, which made sense for a bike that heavy, and it cost more than most people's houses. They made about 500 of them over 9 years. That's not a typo, 9 years to build 500 bikes. It was a statement piece. Look what I can do from a small German manufacturer, and you've got to respect the audacity, even if it made no practical sense whatsoever. Number 10, Virus 987. The Virus 987 is what happens when Italian engineers decide that covering up beautiful machinery is a crime. This bike uses hub center steering, which we'll talk more about later, with the entire suspension system completely exposed. No bodywork, everything is visible. You've got pull rods, push rods, pivot points, and an omega-shaped aluminum frame that's more art than structure. They use Ducati L-twin engines, single-sided swing arms front and rear, and machined almost everything from solid blocks. It looks like it belongs in a modern art museum, and honestly, that's probably where most of them sit. The complexity is off the charts. Every single component is handmade and costs a small fortune. When something breaks, and Italian bikes, we all know stuff breaks, you're looking at weeks of waiting and thousands of dollars in parts. They made very few of these. Production numbers are sketchy because, well, Italian boutique manufacturers aren't great with paperwork. But here's the thing, if you've got the money and you want something that makes people stop and stare, this'll do it. Just don't plan on riding it very often. Number 9, Honda NR750. This is where Japanese engineering went completely off the rails. Honda was obsessed, and I mean obsessed, with beating two-stroke race bikes using a 4-stroke, but there were rules about how many cylinders you could have. So Honda asked, what if we made pistons that weren't round? They created oval pistons. Each piston had 8 valves. 8 for a total of 32 valves in a 4-cylinder bike. The thing revved to 15,000 RPM, which was insane for 1992. They used carbon fiber bodywork. First production bike to do it. Single-sided swing arm, underseat exhausts, electronic fuel injection, upside-down forks, every trick in the book, and they charged $50,000 for it in 1992. That's about $100,000 in today's money. Only 300 were ever made. And here's the kicker. Those oval pistons needed special piston rings that wore out constantly. When they wore out, replacing them cost thousands of dollars. The bike was a technological marvel and a maintenance nightmare rolled into one package. Honda proved they could do it. They showed everyone how clever their engineers were, and then they never did anything that stupid again. Number 8, Kawasaki Ninja H2R. The Kawasaki Ninja H2R is what happens when a company decides street legal restrictions are for wimps. This is a track-only bike with a supercharged engine making 310 horsepower. With ram air, it hits 321 horses. That's more than most sports cars. The supercharger spins at ridiculous speeds, forcing air into the engine under pressure. You've got top-shelf Olin suspension, Brembo brakes with steel rotors instead of the normal cast iron, and carbon fiber wings that actually produce downforce. Why is it on this list if it's so good? Because it's insanely complex. The electronics alone would make your head spin. Traction control, wheelie control, launch control, cornering ABS. It's got more computers than the space shuttle, and it costs $55,000 for a bike you can't even ride on the street. But here's the thing, unlike some bikes on this list, the H2R actually works. It's phenomenally fast. It'll scare you half to death. And if you've got the skill to ride it, it'll blow your mind. The complexity here actually serves a purpose. It's not stupid complexity. It's we're building a missile with 2 wheels complexity. Still, you need an engineering degree just to understand what all the buttons do. Number 7. Bimota Tessi H2. Bimota is an Italian company that spent decades trying to convince people that regular motorcycle forks are garbage. The Tessi H2 takes Kawasaki's supercharged engine, the same one from the bike we just talked about, and puts it in a frame with hub center steering. Instead of forks, you've got a front swing arm. The steering uses linkages, push rods, levers, and pivot points. And the whole thing looks like an alien spacecraft. On paper, hub center steering eliminates brake dive and separates steering forces from suspension forces. In theory, it's better. In reality, the steering lock is terrible. Only 19 degrees, which means U-turns are a nightmare. The system is heavy, it's expensive, and when you ride it, most people say it just feels weird. The Tessi H2 costs $72,000. That's $30,000 more than a regular H2 for a steering system that's different but not actually better. Bimota has been making Tessi bikes since the 80s, and they've sold dozens of them. Dozens! Over multiple decades. You know what that tells you? Sometimes telescopic forks stick around because they work, but I'll give Bimota credit. They never gave up on their vision, even when the market kept saying no thanks. Number 6. Boss Haas V8. Forget everything you know about motorcycles. Boss Haas looked at Chevrolet V8 crate engines and said, yeah, that'll fit. We're talking about 6.2 to 8.1 liter V8 engines. Car engines, producing up to 490 horsepower. In a motorcycle, the whole bike weighs 200 pounds because, well, you're basically riding an engine with 2 wheels bolted on. There's a massive automotive radiator up front. The chassis is custom built to handle all that weight and power. And here's my favorite part. They only use a 2-speed transmission, 2 speeds. Because the engine makes so much torque, you literally don't need more gears. First gear is good for 100 miles an hour. These things are ridiculously loud. They get about 20 miles per gallon, and they cost a fortune. But if you want to turn heads at every stoplight, mission accomplished. The complexity comes from fitting a car engine into a motorcycle frame. Everything has to be custom. The mounts, the cooling system, the exhaust, the wiring, the fuel system. Nothing is off the shelf. Boss Haas has been making these since 1990, and they've built a loyal following. These aren't for people who want a normal motorcycle. These are for people who want to make a statement. That statement is, subtlety is for Europeans. Number 5. Alan Millard's Viper V10. This isn't a factory bike. This is one guy in a shed in England who decided to build a motorcycle around a Dodge Viper V10 engine. Alan Millard is a legend in the custom bike world. The man builds bikes in his garage that put factory efforts to shame. The Viper V10 bike has an 8.0 liter engine making about 500 horsepower. The engine alone weighs 750 pounds. The whole bike weighs 1,389 pounds. There's no traditional frame, just 2 subframes that bolt to the engine. He didn't even bother with a proper transmission. The engine makes so much torque, he just changes rear sprockets to adjust the top speed. With one sprocket setup, it'll do 160 miles per hour. With another, it'll theoretically hit 270. And get this, it's street legal. He registered it, he rides it, and he's put over 9,000 miles on it. The man took a 200 Mafia sports car engine, built a motorcycle around it in his shed, and proved you don't need a factory to build something insane. The complexity here is off the charts, but it's the good kind of complexity. The kind that comes from problem solving and determination, not from engineers overthinking things in a corporate office. Number 4. MTT Turbine Superbike Y2K. The MTT Y2K is powered by a Rolls-Royce helicopter turbine. Read that again. A helicopter turbine. The Allison 250 C20 turbine spins at 52,000 RPM and produces 420 horsepower. It makes 500 pound-feet of torque at just 2,000 RPM. The bike has a 2-speed transmission. First gear is good for 100 miles an hour. They claim the top speed was is undetermined because they weren't sure when it would stop accelerating. The turbine whine is loud enough to wake the dead. The exhaust shoots flames. The whole thing looks and sounds like a jet fighter. Getting a helicopter turbine to work in a street-legal motorcycle required solving problems nobody had ever faced before. The heat management alone must have been a nightmare. And the fuel consumption is absurd. And finding parts? Good luck. They charged $185,000 for these. And people actually bought them. The Y2K is the answer to a question nobody asked. What if we put a helicopter engine in a motorcycle? But the fact that they actually did it and made it work is pretty damn incredible. Number 3. Eisenberg V8. Coming in at number 3 is the Eisenberg V8, a British bike that makes the Boss Hoss look subtle. This thing has a custom-built 3.0-liter V8, producing 480 to 600 horsepower, depending on the tune. It weighs only 550 pounds, which is insane for a V8 bike. The chassis is a carbon fiber monocoque. That's Formula 1 technology. There's a sequential 6-speed gearbox that probably costs more than most used cars. They claim it'll hit 60 miles per hour in under 2.5 seconds and top out over 240 miles per hour. The price? Between $150,000 and $230,000. The engineering required to build a 600 horsepower motorcycle that won't kill you immediately is on another level. The power delivery, the chassis dynamics, the cooling, the brakes, everything has to be perfect or you're building a death trap. They've built very few of these. Production numbers are vague, and honestly, I'm not sure who the target market is. Who needs 600 horsepower on 2 wheels? But someone built it anyway, and that's what puts it on this list. Number 2, Britain V1000. The Britain V1000 is proof that complexity isn't always stupid. Built in a shed in New Zealand by a guy named John Britton, this bike beat factory race teams. The V1000 had no frame. The engine was the frame with the swing arms bolting directly to it. The entire thing weighed 304 pounds. That's lighter than most modern sport bikes. It used extensive carbon fiber and titanium. The suspension was double wishbone up front, like a race car. And this was in the early 1990s, before most production bikes even had fuel injection. Britton programmed his own engine management system on a computer. In 1991, the bike made 155 horsepower and hit 188 miles per hour. At Daytona, it beat bikes from Honda, Yamaha, and Ducati. Only 10 were ever built. John Britton died in 1995 at age 45. The bikes are now worth millions. This is complexity done right. Every complicated bit served a purpose. Nothing was there for show. It was pure engineering genius. The Britain V1000 is on this list because it's stupidly complex, but it's complex for all the right reasons. Number 1, Dodge Tomahawk. This thing has a Dodge Viper V10 engine, 8.3 liters, 500 horsepower, 525 pound-feet of torque. Oh, and it has 4 wheels. That's right, it's not even technically a motorcycle. Each wheel has independent suspension. They patented a hub center steering system that lets all 4 wheels lean together in corners. It's got a 2-speed transmission because, again, the torque makes extra gears pointless. The whole thing weighs 1,500 pounds. Dodge claimed it could hit 300 to 420 miles per hour, though they never tested it above 100 because, you know, death. They built 9 of them. Each one sold for $555,000. They're not street legal, they're sold as rolling sculptures. Let's talk about the complexity. They had to convert the Viper engine to dry sump lubrication, design custom front and rear swing arms for 4 wheels, figure out how to make 4 wheels steer and lean together, mount radiators on top of the engine, and engineer a chassis that could handle 500 horsepower. And for what? A bike you can't ride on the street. That probably can't turn worth a damn. That costs more than most houses. The Tomahawk is the ultimate example of engineers completely losing the plot. It's spectacular, it's insane, it's utterly pointless, and that's why it's number 1. So there you have it. 15 motorcycles that prove engineers sometimes have too much time and too much budget. Some of these were commercial disasters, some were brilliant but impractical, and a few, like the Britain, were actually works of genius. But they all share one thing. Somebody looked at the simple beauty of 2 wheels and an engine and said, we can make this way more complicated. excited. Drop a comment and let me know. Which one of these would you actually want to own? And which one makes you wonder what they were smoking? If you like this video, hit that like button, subscribe for more motorcycle content, and I'll see you in the next one.